and profundity. Finally, of course, there really is a need for theological preparation. And so, you know, I spent the first three chapters just talking about the preparation, because in a way, if we don't have the resurrection perspective, you can forget Christian suffering. I mean, you're not going to suffer well. I mean, if you really believe this, you know, you don't even have to explicitly believe this world is all there is. If you believe even implicitly that this world is all there is, or, you know, you even have that thought that kind of courses through your mind, it's going to be really difficult to interpret suffering well. And again, if you have the wrong notion of God, it's going to be very difficult to know how to suffer well. And finally, if you just make some mistakes, you know, we start kind of taking little chunks of the Old Testament and try and apply them, you know, as if they are completely valid in Christianity today, you know, isolated from the historical period, the culture, and the context in which they were written. We're going to get a very weird doctrine of suffering that Jesus never had anything to do with. But we can get thrown completely off base, and as such, you know, we can suffer very poorly. So you know, I wanted to, you know, meet all those objectives really, and like I said, the Catholic Church has so much to say on all of these areas. I just decided to write one comprehensive volume to sort of, you know, take this wisdom of the ages that starts with, even before Jesus, but of course finds its apex in Jesus, and then is developed throughout the ages, but, you know, through such great saints, you know, and the saints are really the ones who teach us more than anyone how to suffer well, because they're the ones who transform suffering into love, faith, and salvation more than anyone. So
now in the beginning of this book, your book, The Light Shines On in the Darkness, one of the things I was listening to what you were just saying, and it related to something I read where you said, in the beginning, the meaning and love of this world, no matter how powerful and full, cannot satisfy our yearning for and calling to transcendent purpose and home. You say this was confirmed by a study by the American Psychiatric Association, indicating that non-religiously affiliated individuals have significantly greater anxiety, meaninglessness, familial tensions, past substance abuse, and suicide attempts than the religious affiliated. And you go on to say, we then are asked how cosmic emptiness, loneliness, alienation, guilt can be alleviated. Sometimes I think people think by rejecting God, it's a way of getting away from suffering. Meanwhile, what we're seeing, if you're rejecting that transcendent, you're setting yourselves up for really a culture of despair, which it seems we have more and more, at least in the West.
Well, there's no doubt about it. I mean, as you pointed out, this is an American Psychiatric Association study. It was done by Kanita Dervik and 10 other psychiatrists in 2004, published in the American Journal of Psychiatry. And you know, as you said, if you know, don't have a theological perspective, if you don't have this resurrection perspective, if you don't have some kind of a relationship with God internally, the odds are very, very good that you will experience a great deal of meaninglessness, anxiety, impulsivity, aggressivity, substance abuse, familial tensions, and suicides. I mean, this is going to be the normal result. This is not a happy person. This is a person who's suffering at the deepest levels. And so what the APA, the American Psychiatric Association study, is telling us is that, yeah, that we are built, you know, St. Augustine was right, for thou hast made us for thyself, and our hearts are restless until they rest in thee. And, you know, he was absolutely right. Our hearts are not only restless, our hearts, you know, almost tend toward anxiety, meaninglessness, malaise, impulsivity, and suicide if we're not in a relationship with God. And that's compounded by this cosmic emptiness, alienation, and loneliness of just being, you know, not being present to God, or having God as present in our lives, in our consciousness, for which He has created us. So there we are. You know, we're left, you know, with a you know, a terrible, terrible kind of suffering, the most terrible kind of suffering, without communion with God and relationship with God in our lives. So a very, very good point.
Well, here's a question, comes out of our show last week. Dear Father Spitzer, years after losing my youngest child, I have a big hole in my heart. I long to see my son. I still cry when I miss him. I know he is also in heaven with God, but at the same time, I want God to show me a sign that my son really is in heaven.